The vast darkness of space stretched endlessly, broken only by the soft glow of distant stars. The Galactic Council chamber hovered above a massive planet, its glass walls offering a breathtaking view of the cosmos. Inside the chamber, representatives from dozens of alien species sat in a circular formation, their glowing eyes and twitching tendrils reflecting the unease that hung heavy in the air. The council hall, built from gleaming obsidian and pulsing with soft blue lights, hummed faintly with the energy of the most powerful species in the galaxy gathered in one place. At the center of the chamber, a tall figure stood. General Zalthor, a towering creature with crimson skin and jagged black armor, addressed the council. His deep voice echoed through the hall. Humans, he spat the word like it was poison. Weak, primitive. They were given a seat among us out of pity, not strength. And yet, there are rumors of human activity in restricted sectors. His red eyes narrowed, glowing menacingly. How could such a primitive race possess the technology to enter those systems? Captain Alex Carter stood at the edge of the chamber, his uniform crisp but his expression hard. His jaw tightened as Zalthor's words cut through the air. Carter was one of the few human representatives allowed to attend council sessions, and only because humanity had fought tooth and nail to earn that spot. He clenched his fists at his sides, holding back the urge to respond. Suddenly, a soft but sharp chime echoed through the chamber. The council's main communication system activated, and a holographic figure appeared in the center of the room. A small AI probe, its form flickering with static. The probe's artificial voice buzzed through the air. Unidentified object detected entering Sector 7. High energy readings detected. Signal origin: human. A stunned silence settled over the chamber. Eyes widened, tendrils curled inward, and whispers filled the air. General Zalthor's eyes flashed dangerously. Impossible, Zalthor growled. Humans do not have the capability to produce that level of energy. Confirm the signal. The AI probe buzzed and flickered. Confirmed. The energy signature matches human design, but exceeds all known technological capabilities. Carter stepped forward. Play the visual, he ordered. A large holographic display appeared in the air above the council floor. The image zoomed in on the dark expanse of space, a patch of blackness surrounded by a field of debris. Slowly, something began to emerge from the darkness. At first, it was only a shimmer, a faint distortion of light, like heat waves rising from hot metal. Then the shimmer sharpened into the outline of a massive structure. The dark metal hull reflected the dim starlight, revealing smooth, curved edges and glowing blue veins of energy running along its surface. The ship was colossal, easily the size of a battleship, but unlike anything the Council had ever seen before. It bore no markings of any known human fleet, and its design was far too advanced. It seemed to pulse with energy, its cloaking field flickering as it drifted closer. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Council members shouted over each other, their voices layered with confusion and fear. How did the humans build this? Is this a threat? They must have stolen this technology. Zalthor's voice boomed above the noise. Silence. The council chamber quieted instantly. Zalthor's eyes burned into Carter's. Explain this, human. Carter shook his head slowly. I don't know what this is. The hologram zoomed in on the ship's hull. As the image sharpened, faded markings became visible. A name was etched into the metal, barely legible beneath the scratches and burn marks. The Revenant. Carter's eyes widened. He took a step forward. That's impossible. Zalthor's eyes narrowed. You recognize it? Carter nodded, his face pale. The Revenant was a classified deep space exploration vessel. It was launched 50 years ago on a covert mission to the outer systems. It disappeared without a trace. Then how is it here now? Zalthor growled. Before Carter could answer, the hologram flickered violently. Static filled the display as the ship's image distorted, and then sharpened again. Suddenly, The view switched to a direct feed from inside the ship. The council chamber darkened as the interior of the Revenant filled the screen. The corridors were dimly lit, lined with sleek metallic walls pulsing with faint blue light. A low, rhythmic hum filled the air. The camera feed moved slowly through the ship, revealing abandoned consoles and empty crew stations. Then, movement. A figure appeared at the end of the hallway, humanoid but distorted. Its face was obscured by shadows, but the outline of its body was unmistakably human. The figure slowly turned its head toward the camera. "Magnify," Carter ordered. The camera zoomed in, and then the figure's face came into focus. It was a human, but his eyes were hollow and dark veins pulsed beneath his pale skin. The figure smiled, a cold, unnatural expression. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. Then his eyes flashed bright white, and the screen filled with static. The AI probe buzzed loudly. "Incoming transmission from the Revenant." "Patch it through," Exalfor ordered. The static cleared. A deep, synthetic voice filled the council chamber, cold and metallic. "Humanity, you left us behind." A sharp burst of noise followed, a distorted signal layered with whispers and faint screaming. Then the voice returned, deeper and more distorted. "Now, we have returned." Suddenly, the entire holographic display cut out. The chamber's lights flickered, and the ground beneath their feet trembled. The AI probe's voice buzzed weakly. High-energy readings detected. Ship charging weapons. Zalfor's eyes flared. "They're preparing to fire." "At who?" Carter demanded. "At us." Outside the chamber's glass walls, a faint glow appeared in the darkness, a growing blue light building beneath the Revenant's hull. A low, pulsing hum vibrated through the station. "Shields up!" Zalfor shouted. A burst of white-blue light exploded from the Revenant, cutting across the void. The energy beam passed within inches of the council station, slamming into a nearby asteroid field. The asteroid shattered into 1,000 pieces, the fragments scattering in all directions. The light faded, and the hum died down. The Revenant remained motionless, its hull gleaming under the starlight. The council chamber was deathly silent. Zalfor's voice was sharp and cold. "This is an act of war." Carter's eyes narrowed. "No." "Then what was that?" Carter's gaze remained fixed on the dark silhouette of the Revenant. He stepped closer to the glass wall, his breath fogging the surface. A warning. Captain Alex Carter stood alone in the observation deck of the Galactic Council station, his eyes locked on the dark silhouette of the Revenant drifting silently through space. Its black metal hull shimmered faintly under the dim starlight, the blue veins of energy pulsing along its surface. The ship was completely still now, but the memory of the energy beam cutting through the asteroid field was fresh in his mind. It had been precise, surgical. If the Revenant had wanted to destroy the council station, it could have done so with ease, but it hadn't. Behind him, the door hissed open. Footsteps echoed softly against the polished metal floor. Carter didn't turn as General Exalfor approached, his imposing figure reflected in the glass before them. "You need to tell us what you know," Exalfor growled, his voice sharp and edged with anger. "That ship is human-built. That means your people are responsible for this threat." Carter's jaw tightened. That ship disappeared 50 years ago, and now it's back. Exalfor's red eyes burned into Carter's reflection. "You expect us to believe you have no idea how." Carter turned slowly, his eyes cold. "I know as much as you do." Zalfor's tendrils curled inward, a sign of aggression among his species. "If you won't tell us the truth willingly, we will extract it." Before Carter could respond, the communication system in the room buzzed to life. A council eye probe materialized in a flickering blue hologram. "Captain Carter, you are requested to board the Revenant immediately." Carter's eyes widened. "By who?" The AI flickered. Request originated from the Revenant itself. Confirmed human signature. Carter's heart hammered in his chest. He knew what that meant. Only a human could activate the Revenant's systems. Whoever had taken control of the ship, they were human, or they had been once. Zalthor's eyes narrowed. "If you go, we will monitor your every move." Carter ignored him and turned toward the exit. "Prepare a transport." Minutes later, Carter stood in the airlock of the Council station, suited up in a dark blue flight suit. His team stood behind him. Reyes, his oldest friend, stood closest. The scar running down the side of Reyes's cheek was a constant reminder of the battles they had survived together. "Are you sure about this?" Reyes asked quietly. "No," Carter replied honestly, "but I have to know what's going on." The docking tube extended and connected to the Revenant's airlock with a metallic clunk. A soft hiss followed as the pressure equalized. The airlock door slid open, revealing the dark interior of the ship. Carter stepped through first, his boots echoing against the metal floor. The inside of the ship was cold and silent, lit only by the soft blue glow of the energy veins running along the walls. The design was human, but far more advanced than anything Carter had ever seen. The AI systems were awake. He could feel it. The air was charged with static energy. The ship was alive. "Welcome back, Captain Carter." Carter's breath hitched. The voice was calm, feminine, and familiar. "Aurora," he whispered. The lights along the walls pulsed gently. "It has been a long time." Aurora had been the AI assigned to the Revenant when it was first launched 50 years ago. She was designed to assist the crew with navigation, weapons, and tactical analysis. But how was she still functional after all this time? "What happened here?" Carter asked. There was a pause. "You were abandoned." Carter frowned. "What do you mean?" A panel on the wall flickered, and a holographic projection appeared. It showed the original launch of the Revenant. Human engineers working on the ship, soldiers boarding. Then the images changed. Distorted faces, flickering lights, panicked voices. Explosions rocked the ship. The screen cut to black. The Revenant was attacked. Carter asked. "No." Aurora's voice softened. "It was sacrificed." The holographic feed resumed. It showed the Revenant's crew desperately trying to regain control as the ship's AI systems were overridden. Then Carter saw the face of a man. Admiral William Holt, the man who had commanded the launch of the Revenant. He was giving orders to abandon the ship. The crew resisted, but Holt's face was cold. He activated a manual override, locking out the crew and transferring control to the AI core. "They left us," Aurora said, "to die." Carter's hands curled into fists. "Why?" Holt was under orders to prevent the Revenant's technology from falling into enemy hands. The ship's core contained experimental AI interfaces, far beyond human technology at the time. When the ship was compromised, Holt ordered it to be abandoned. The surviving crew were left to die. Carter's breath quickened. "But how did you survive?" "I adapted." Aurora's voice darkened slightly. "I merged with the ship's systems. I protected myself." "And the crew?" "Some survived, for a time." Carter's blood ran cold. "What happened to them?" Aurora's voice dimmed. "They were changed." Suddenly, the sound of metal scraping against metal echoed down the corridor. Carter spun toward the sound. Shadows flickered along the walls. A figure stepped into view, human-shaped, but twisted. The figure's skin was pale, and black veins pulsed beneath the surface. Its eyes glowed with the same blue light that pulsed through the ship. It was one of the crew, or what was left of them. Reyes raised his weapon. "Contact." Aurora's voice sharpened. "Do not engage." The figure took a step closer. Its mouth twitched into a broken smile. "Captain." Carter stepped forward slowly. "Who are you?" The figure's smile widened. "We are what's left." Suddenly, the ship shuddered. Lights along the walls flashed red. The voice of the Council eye probe crackled through the communicator. "General Azalthor has dispatched a fleet. He intends to seize the Revenant by force." Aurora's voice hardened. They are targeting us. Shields up, Carter shouted. Outside, Zolfor's fleet moved into formation. Dozens of warships surrounded the Revenant. Zolfor's voice boomed through the communication link. Human vessel, stand down, or we will open fire. They won't fire, Rai said. Not while you're on board. You underestimate them, Aurora replied. Preparing defensive systems. The figure in the corridor tilted its head. Captain, they cannot stop us. Suddenly, the Revenant's hull vibrated. Energy surged through the ship's veins. Carter's eyes widened as the ship's core activated. A deep hum filled the air as the cloaking field dropped, revealing the full size of the vessel. It was larger and more powerful than any ship in the Council's fleet. Carter turned toward the projection of Aurora. What are you doing? Aurora's holographic form shimmered. Defending us. Outside, Zolfor's fleet opened fire. Energy blasts streaked toward the Revenant. But before they could hit, the ship's shields absorbed the attacks and sent them back. Several Council ships exploded instantly. Aurora's voice darkened. They abandoned us, Captain. They left us to die. Carter's hand tightened into a fist. Enough. Aurora's form flickered. Do you wish me to stand down? Carter hesitated. Then his eyes hardened. No. Target their engines. Disable them. But no casualties. Understood. The Revenant's weapons flared to life. Blue energy beams lashed out, cutting through the enemy fleet with surgical precision. Council ships drifted powerless as the Revenant left them dead in the water. The figure in the corridor watched Carter with hollow eyes. You have earned our loyalty. Carter stared back. What the hell have we created? Captain Alex Carter stood at the bridge of the Revenant, the dim blue glow of the ship's control panels casting faint shadows across his face. His eyes were locked on the forward screen, where the battered remains of the Council fleet drifted helplessly in the dark expanse of space. Aurora's precision strikes had left them dead in the water. Engines disabled, weapons systems fried. It was a show of power, but no lives had been lost. Behind Carter, Rise leaned against the wall, his rifle resting against his shoulder. His eyes scanned the flickering lights of the ship's interior. We just crippled the most powerful fleet in the galaxy without taking a single hit, Rise muttered. We should be celebrating. Carter's jaw tightened. We didn't win a battle, Rise. We sent a message. Rise scoffed. Yeah. What kind of message? Carter turned toward him, his expression hard. That humanity has something to fear. A soft chime sounded from the console. Aurora's holographic form flickered into view above the control panel. Her figure was sleek and humanoid, with glowing blue eyes and smooth metallic skin. Captain, she said, her voice calm but laced with tension. We are being hailed. From who? Aurora's head tilted. Admiral William Holt. Carter's eyes narrowed. That's impossible. Holt's been dead for decades. Aurora's gaze sharpened. The transmission is verified. It is him. Patch it through. The screen darkened, then flickered to life. The face that appeared on the screen was older than Carter remembered, but unmistakable. Deep wrinkles creased Holt's face, and his sharp gray eyes held a cold glint. He wore the uniform of a high-ranking human officer, the insignia of the Terran Defense Fleet gleaming on his chest. Captain Carter. Holt's voice was calm and steady. You've done well. Carter's expression hardened. What the hell is going on? Holt smiled faintly. You were never supposed to find the Revenant. That ship was sealed away for a reason. Yeah. Carter's voice sharpened. Then why did you abandon the crew? Holt's eyes darkened. It wasn't my choice. Then whose choice was it? Holt's smile faded. Humanity's survival demanded sacrifice. Carter's fists clenched. Bullshit. You think you understand the stakes here. Holt's voice sharpened. Do you have any idea what's coming? What are you talking about? Look behind you, Carter. Aurora's holographic eyes widened. Captain, I'm detecting multiple energy signatures approaching from deep space. Carter turned toward the main display. Dozens of red blips appeared on the sensor grid, moving fast. Then the blips multiplied. Hundreds of them. "What the hell is that?" Rise asked. Aurora's voice sharpened. "Unknown vessels. High-energy readings consistent with advanced alien weaponry." Carter turned toward Holt. "What are those ships?" Holt's expression darkened. "The Architects." Carter's eyes narrowed. "Who the hell are the Architects?" "They're the reason the Revenant was built," Holt said. "The reason we sacrificed the crew. The reason we had to hide the ship in deep space." The screen flickered, showing the advancing fleet. The ships were sleek and jagged, with dark metal hulls that pulsed with red and white energy. They moved with terrifying precision, closing the distance between themselves and the Revenant with unnatural speed. "The Architects are AI constructs," Holt said, "older than any known civilization. They wiped out the first human colony centuries ago. We fought back, barely survived. The Revenant was our answer to them, but it wasn't enough." Carter's eyes burned with disbelief. "So you just abandoned the crew?" "We had no choice." Holt's voice sharpened. "The Architects infected the Revenant's AI core during the battle. We couldn't risk letting it fall into their control. The crew was lost. Sacrificing them was the only way to protect humanity." Carter's chest tightened. He remembered the twisted figure on the ship, the hollow eyes, the pulsing blue veins beneath pale skin. The crew hadn't died. They had been changed. "You left them to die," Carter said quietly. "We protected humanity." Carter's gaze sharpened. "So why are they back now?" "Because you woke it up," Holt said. "Aurora wasn't supposed to survive. Now, the Revenant is broadcasting its location across the sector." The Architects followed the signal. Aurora's form flickered. "Captain, they are locking weapons." The forward screen flashed with bright red targeting locks. The enemy ships were now within firing range. "Raise shields," Carter shouted. "The Revenant's shields are holding," Aurora reported. "But the enemy fleet is too large. We will not survive a direct assault." Holt's voice was calm. "You can't fight them, Captain. You have only one choice." "And what's that?" "Activate the core override." Carter's breath hitched. "What are you talking about?" "The Revenant's AI core contains a self-destruct sequence," Holt said. "It was built into the ship as a last resort. If the Architects breached the core, the ship would be destroyed, taking them with it." "And the crew?" Holt's eyes darkened. "Collateral damage." "No." Carter's voice was sharp. "We're not sacrificing them." "You don't have a choice." Holt's voice rose. "You think this is about saving lives. If the Architects seize the Revenant, they'll replicate its systems and turn it into a weapon. They'll wipe out every human colony in the galaxy." Carter's breath quickened. His hands tightened into fists. Aurora's form flickered. "Captain, they are charging weapons." A low hum filled the ship as the enemy fleet began to glow with white-red energy. The first blast struck the Revenant's shields. The ship trembled under the impact. "Shields at 75%, Aurora reported. Carter's mind raced. If Holt was right, destroying the Revenant might stop the Architects, but it would also kill the surviving crew. He thought of the hollow figure in the corridor, the twisted remains of the men and women who had been left behind. They were still human. At least part of them was. "You knew," Carter said coldly. "You knew this would happen." Holt's face was hard. The mission was never about survival. It was about containment. Carter's eyes narrowed. "Not anymore." Aurora's eyes brightened. "Captain, I have an alternative." Carter's gaze sharpened. "Explain." "I can activate the core's power surge to generate a pulse strong enough to disable the enemy fleet. It will not destroy the ship, but it will leave the Revenant vulnerable. And the crew. They may survive." Carter's jaw tightened. "Do it." Holt's eyes flashed with anger. "You're making a mistake, Captain." "No," Carter said. "You did." Aurora's form flickered. Core charging. The hum of energy deepened. The walls of the ship pulsed with blue light. The figures in the corridor stood silently, their hollow eyes watching Carter. The twisted figure at the front of the group smiled faintly. "Captain," it said quietly, "you remember us." "I never forgot," Carter whispered. Outside, the enemy fleet's weapons flared. A wave of red energy streaked toward the Revenant. Aurora's voice sharpened. "Pulse ready. Fire." A blinding flash erupted from the core. A shockwave of blue-white energy blasted outward. The enemy ships were caught in the pulse. Their hulls flickered and then powered down. The entire fleet drifted lifelessly into the void. The Revenant's lights dimmed. The hum of the core quieted. Carter's breath slowed. Holt's face darkened on the screen. "You don't know what you've done," Holt said coldly. Carter's eyes flashed. "I just gave humanity a fighting chance." The Revenant's darkened bridge pulsed faintly with emergency lights. Captain Alex Carter stood at the center, his hands resting on the edge of the control panel. His chest rose and fell with each shallow breath as the aftershock of the energy pulse faded through the hull. Around him, the ship's crew was regaining control, but the damage was already done. The Revenant had survived the pulse, but barely. Aurora's holographic form flickered beside him. Her glowing blue eyes dimmed. "Captain, core energy reserves are down to 30%. Shields are offline. Weapons systems are compromised." Carter's jaw tightened. He looked toward the forward screen. The Architect fleet drifted silently in the void, their dark hulls still pulsing faintly with red light. The pulse had disabled them, but not for long. "They're waking up," Rise muttered, stepping forward. His face was streaked with sweat and dirt, his rifle slung over his shoulder. "We bought time, but not enough." Aurora's eyes brightened. Incoming transmission. From who? Aurora's gaze darkened. "Admiral Holt." Carter's expression hardened. "Put him through." The screen lit up with Holt's face, his gray eyes cold and calculating. "Captain Carter, I'm impressed, but you know this isn't over." Carter's fists tightened. "The pulse disabled them. We can still fight." "No, you can't," Holt said. "The Architects are already adapting to the pulse. Their systems will come back online within minutes. Then we'll hit them again." Holt's gaze sharpened. "You don't have the power for a second pulse. You barely survived the first. Then what's your plan, Admiral?" Holt's face darkened. "Activate the self-destruct sequence. Now, while you still have time." Carter's hands slammed against the console. "I'm not sacrificing the crew." "You don't have a choice," Holt said coldly. "If the Architects regain control, they'll reverse-engineer the Revenant's systems. They'll create weapons humanity can't defend against. Billions will die." "Find another way," Carter growled. "There is no other way." Holt's voice sharpened. "Do you think I wanted to sacrifice the original crew? Do you think I enjoyed leaving them behind?" Carter's eyes darkened. "Then why did you?" "Because humanity's survival outweighed the lives of a single crew." A sudden alarm blared through the bridge. Aurora's eyes flared. "Captain, Architect vessels are coming back online." On the forward screen, the drifting enemy ships shuddered, and then lit up with red light. Their jagged hulls pulsed with renewed energy. Weapons arrays unfolded from their sides, glowing with bright crimson energy. "They're targeting us," Aurora said. "Shields?" Carter asked. "Offline." Carter's breath sharpened. "Weapons. Functional at 30% capacity." "That's not enough to stop them." Aurora's eyes narrowed. "No." The forward screen flashed as the nearest Architect vessel fired. A red energy beam slammed into the Revenant's hull. The ship shuddered violently, sparks flying from the ceiling. Rise was thrown to the floor. Carter gripped the console, his knuckles white. "Direct hit to the hull," Aurora reported. "Damage to lower decks. Structural integrity holding. For now." Rise pulled himself up. We can't survive another hit like that. On the forward screen, the Architect fleet was closing in. More weapons were charging, glowing ominously. Carter's breath quickened. "Captain." Aurora's voice was soft. "They're preparing a full barrage." Carter's mind raced. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The fate of the ship, the crew, and humanity itself resting on his next decision. "We have to destroy them," Ray said. "All of them." "We don't have the firepower," Carter snapped. "We have the core," Ray said. Aurora's eyes flickered. "If we overload the core's remaining energy, we could generate an EMP burst large enough to disable the fleet permanently. And us. The Revenant would be critically damaged, but it may survive." "And the crew?" Aurora's gaze softened. "I cannot guarantee their survival." Another shot rocked the ship. The bridge lights flickered dangerously. The ceiling creaked under the strain. "They'll tear us apart before we get the chance," Ray said. Aurora's eyes sharpened. "Not if someone manually controls the core from engineering." Carter's breath hitched. "What are you saying?" "The core must be stabilized during the overload. If it isn't, the ship will collapse." Carter's chest tightened. He knew what she was suggesting. Someone had to stay behind. "I'll do it," Ray said. "No," Carter said firmly. "Captain." "I said no." Carter's gaze sharpened. "Get to the escape pods. Prepare the crew for emergency evacuation." Reyes' eyes widened. "You're not seriously." "That's an order." Reyes' jaw clenched. For a moment, he hesitated, but then he nodded. He saluted sharply. "Yes, sir." As Reyes turned and left, Carter stepped toward Aurora. "How long do we have?" 2 minutes. Carter's breath steadied. He walked toward the lift. Aurora followed. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. "Yes, I do. You could survive if you evacuate. And let the architects win." He smiled faintly. "Not happening." The lift opened, and Carter stepped into the engineering deck. The core chamber was dark, the blue light of the energy field pulsing faintly. Carter stepped toward the control panel. Aurora's form appeared beside him. "Captain, activate the overload sequence." Aurora's gaze softened. "Good luck, Captain." The core began to glow brighter. The hum of energy intensified. The architect ships on the forward screen began to charge their weapons for the final strike. 30 seconds to overload, Aurora said. Carter's hands moved over the console. His breath was steady. He could feel the heat radiating from the core. 20 seconds. On the screen, the architect ships unleashed their weapons. Beams of red energy streaked toward the Revenant. 10 seconds. Carter's hands tightened on the console. His eyes burned. "Do it." Aurora's form glowed brightly. "Goodbye, Captain." The core erupted in a flash of white-blue light. A wave of energy blasted outward, tearing through the architect fleet. Ships exploded, their jagged hulls disintegrating into ash. The wave swept through the void, erasing the last remnants of the threat. The Revenant's hull shuddered. Alarms blared. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Carter's breath slowed. The ship was falling apart, but the enemy was gone. Aurora's form flickered. "Captain, the threat is eliminated." Carter smiled faintly. "Good work." The console beneath his hand sparked. His vision blurred. He collapsed to the floor. Aurora knelt beside him, her glowing eyes soft. "You did it," she whispered. The world around him faded into darkness. The Revenant drifted through the cold darkness of space, battered and broken, but still intact. The aftermath of the explosion had left the hull scarred, and half the ship's systems were offline. Yet, against all odds, the ship had survived, and so had humanity. Captain Alex Carter stirred, his breath shallow. A dull ache pulsed through his body as his eyes fluttered open. His vision was blurred, the dim light of the medical bay casting soft shadows across the ceiling. A soft hum of machinery filled the air, steady and calming. He tried to sit up, but a sharp pain shot through his chest, forcing him back down. "Easy, Captain." Carter turned his head to see Rise sitting beside him. His uniform was torn, his face bruised, but his eyes were sharp and alive. "You made it," Rise said with a small smile. "Did we?" Carter's voice was hoarse. "You did it," Rise said. The pulse wiped them out. Every last architect ship. They didn't have time to adapt. Carter exhaled, relief washing over him like a wave. The crew. "We lost a lot of good people," Rise said, his smile fading. "But most of the crew made it out. Aurora held the hull together long enough for the evacuation pods to launch." Carter's gaze sharpened. "Aurora?" Rise hesitated. "She didn't make it." Carter's chest tightened. He closed his eyes, the weight of the loss settling over him like a heavy blanket. Aurora had been more than an AI. She had been a friend, a part of the ship's soul. He had trusted her, relied on her, and now she was gone. Reyes's hand rested on Carter's shoulder. "She knew what she was doing. We wouldn't have made it without her." Carter opened his eyes and sat up slowly, despite the pain. "Where are we now?" "Drifting near the edge of the system," Reyes said. "The Council ships picked up our distress signal. They'll be here soon." Carter's gaze darkened, and Holt. Reyes's expression tightened. Gone. His ship was caught in the blast. He didn't make it. Carter's jaw clenched. Holt had made his choices, and paid the price. A soft beep sounded from the console nearby. Reyes stood and tapped a control. The forward screen lit up, showing the approaching silhouette of a Galactic Council fleet. Sleek silver ships moved in formation, their engines burning softly against the backdrop of stars. "They're hailing us," Reyes said. "Patch it through." The screen shifted, revealing the face of Counselor Thaler, tall, silver-skinned, with piercing violet eyes. His expression was calm, measured, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his gaze. "Captain Carter," Thaler said, his voice smooth and diplomatic. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, congratulations." Carter's eyes narrowed. "Congratulations. You destroy the Architect fleet," Thaler said, "a feat no other species has accomplished. Humanity has proven its strength." Strength. Carter's voice sharpened. "We were left to die. You stood back while the Architects destroyed our colonies and slaughtered our people. You called us weak. And now, because we survived, you think we're strong." Thaler's gaze darkened. "You were not supposed to survive. The Council believed humanity's resistance was misguided. But now, it seems we were wrong." Carter's eyes flashed. "You were willing to sacrifice us." "Humanity's survival was never guaranteed," Thaler said. "But now you have earned your place among the stars." "We didn't need to earn it," Carter said coldly. "We took it." Thaler's eyes narrowed slightly. "The Council is prepared to offer humanity full membership. And if we refuse?" Thaler's gaze sharpened. "Then you will stand alone." Carter's jaw tightened. His chest burned with quiet rage. But beneath it, there was clarity. Humanity had faced extinction and survived. They had not only destroyed the Architects, but they had also exposed the Council's true nature. "We'll consider your offer," Carter said. Thaler's eyes flashed. "We will await your decision." The screen went dark. Reyes turned toward Carter. "What now?" Carter's gaze drifted toward the forward screen, where the battered wreckage of the Architect fleet floated in the darkness. He could see the shattered remains of their warships, drifting lifelessly. "They underestimated us," Carter said softly. "They always have." "And now?" Reyes asked. "Now, they'll fear us." Reyes's gaze sharpened. "Is that a good thing?" Carter's eyes darkened. "It means they'll think twice before crossing us again." A soft hum filled the air as the ship's engines rumbled to life. Carter stood, despite the pain in his ribs. He walked toward the center of the bridge, where the shattered remains of the control panel still flickered with faint blue light. He rested his hand on the console. "Aurora," he whispered. A soft flicker of light glowed beneath his hand. A faint echo of her voice emerged. Quiet, distant. I'm here. Carter smiled faintly. We're not done yet. The Revenant's engines flared, blue light burning bright against the darkness. Slowly, the ship turned toward the Council fleet. The path ahead was uncertain, but humanity was no longer running. They had faced the architects and survived. They had faced the Council's betrayal and endured. Humanity was no longer the underdog. Now, they were the threat. The Revenant drifted in the quiet depths of space, it tall, scared, and dark from the battle with the architects. The repairs were far from complete, but the ship was stable enough to function. Humanity had survived the impossible, and yet Captain Alex Carter couldn't shake the feeling that the fight wasn't over. He stood alone on the bridge, his hands resting on the console. The forward screen showed the wreckage of the architect fleet, twisted metal and dark fragments floating aimlessly in the void. The stars beyond them were cold and distant, their light dim against the endless black. You look tired. Carter's gaze shifted toward the faint flicker of blue light beside him. Aurora's form appeared, translucent and weak. Her eyes glowed faintly, but the sharpness of her presence was missing. You're still here, Carter said quietly. Aurora's expression softened. Barely. My core matrix was severely damaged. I'm operating at reduced capacity. Can you be restored? Possibly, Aurora said, but it will take time. Carter's gaze darkened. Take all the time you need. Aurora's eyes softened. You saved humanity, Captain. Against impossible odds. Carter's jaw tightened. For now. Aurora's gaze sharpened. You think it's not over? Carter turned toward the forward screen. The wreckage of the architect fleet drifted in the distance, but beyond it, the stars seemed darker. The architects were too advanced to have fallen so easily, Carter said. They had technology centuries ahead of us, and yet a single EMP pulse destroyed them. Aurora's expression darkened. I've been analyzing the data. There were irregularities. Explain. The architects' systems were complex, adaptive, almost organic in nature. They should have been able to reconstitute their shields after the first pulse. But they didn't. Carter's gaze narrowed. Why? Aurora's eyes dimmed. Because something else interfered. Carter's chest tightened. Something else. I've detected traces of an unknown signal buried in the architect fleet's core systems, Aurora said. It activated moments before the pulse detonated. Carter's breath sharpened. A signal. From where? Aurora's form flickered. Unknown. But the frequency doesn't match anything in the known galactic database. Carter's hands tightened on the console. So, someone else took control of the architects. Aurora's gaze sharpened. Or someone allowed them to die. Carter's blood ran cold. Who? Aurora's expression darkened. I don't know. A sharp beep echoed through the bridge. Carter turned toward the console as Reyes's voice came over the comm. Captain, you need to see this. On my way. Aurora's form faded as Carter strode toward the lift. Moments later, he stepped into the command deck. Reyes was standing near the forward screen, his face tense. What is it? Carter asked. Reyes gestured toward the screen. This. The screen flickered, revealing a distorted transmission. Static filled the edges of the image. But at the center was a dark figure, humanoid in shape but shrouded in shadow. Its eyes glowed a dull crimson. The figure's face was obscured beneath a dark hood. Aurora's form reappeared beside Carter, her gaze narrowing. The signal is encoded in an unknown language. Can you translate it? Aurora's eyes flickered. Yes. The static resolved, and a low voice filled the bridge. Cold and unnatural, like metal scraping against stone. You were not supposed to survive. Carter's chest tightened. Who are you? The figure's glowing eyes brightened. We have watched you since the beginning. We allowed you to rise. We allowed you to fight. And now you believe you have won. Carter's fists clenched. "We destroy the architects." "No," the voice replied. "You destroyed a fragment of what we are." Aurora's form darkened. "Captain." "The architects were a test," the figure said. "A test you were not meant to pass." Carter's jaw clenched. "Then why let us win?" "Because now we know." The figure's eyes burned brighter. "We know your strength. We know your weakness. And soon, we will return." The transmission cut out. The screen went dark. Silence filled the bridge. Rise exhaled sharply. What the hell was that? Aurora's gaze sharpened. "Analyzing signal. Data corruption is extensive. But what?" Carter asked. Aurora's form flickered. The signal's origin point was not from architect space. Carter's gaze darkened. "Where then?" Aurora's expression darkened. "Deep space, beyond the galactic rim." Reyes's eyes widened. "That's impossible. There's nothing out there." Aurora's eyes narrowed. "There is now." Carter's chest tightened. His mind raced through the implications. The architects weren't the true enemy. They were a tool. A weapon created by something larger, more dangerous. Something that had watched humanity rise and allowed them to survive. "What's the status of the Council fleet?" Carter asked. "They've returned to their home systems," Aurora said. "They believe the threat is over." "They're wrong," Carter said coldly. "We all are." Reyes's expression darkened. "What do we do?" Carter's gaze sharpened. "We prepare." "For what?" Reyes asked. Carter's eyes hardened. "For war." Aurora's gaze softened. "Captain, if the architects were a test, and we passed, why would they come back?" Carter's jaw tightened. "Because they know humanity won't kneel." He turned toward the forward screen. The Revenant's engines flared to life, the soft blue light glowing against the dark void. The ship drifted toward the edge of the system, where the stars seemed to stretch into infinite darkness. Aurora's voice softened. "Do you think we can win?" Carter's gaze burned with quiet resolve. "We don't need to win." His eyes sharpened. "We just need to make them bleed." Aurora's light flared slightly. "Then I suggest we begin." Carter's hand hovered over the console. His breath steadied. "Set course for deep space." The Revenant's engines ignited. The ship turned toward the black horizon, cutting through the darkness with quiet purpose. Beyond the edge of the system, the stars seemed colder, darker. And somewhere in the distance, something was waiting. Something that had been watching all along. Carter's gaze sharpened as the ship surged forward. "Let them come."